Here's a koan for us. When does the meditation practice begin? Usually I wait until we reach the 1,000 people mark, which I can see right down here on my screen in terms of participants. You probably can as well. Before beginning, so that everybody's kind of taking their seat. But check and see if you're kind of waiting for something to begin. Because there's no beginning to this practice, nor is there any end to the practice, at least until our last breath. This moment is always now, and it's very easy to fall into thinking that we're on the way to some other moment when, okay, now it will be better, or now the bells will ring, and now we're all together, and now we can meditate. But just noticing what the mind is doing in this moment. And whether you can ask yourself, I mean, I can ask myself too, is this our meditation today? Or are we waiting for the 1,000 people mark to arise, which usually happens before 2 o'clock or right at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And now it's only 3 minutes after 2. And we're almost there. And where is there? 1,000 people, but what is that? Just one more thought, one more abstraction that we can get lost in or attached to. And the reason I bring this up is because that's true for every moment when we begin to bring attention to how the mind is actually operating. Very often, you may find that we're on our way to some better moment when it will all happen for us, or when we'll be able to formally take up our meditation pose and drop in on this timeless present moment. But the timeless present moment is always here. So one of the invitations and serious challenges is, can we bring that kind of presencing to every single moment, including the periods that we set aside for formal meditation? And hopefully by now, the message that I've been repeating over and over again, that even during the guided meditations, the invitation is not to, listen to my voice in the kind of ordinary way, but to actually detect where it's pointing to in yourself and dwell here in this experiencing of what is being pointed to. And then the silence is underneath all those words and the pointing to. And whatever's going on in your own life that you could use as an excuse for being too discombobulated or agitated to be present. But the agitation, as we've been seeing, is not a problem. We can put the welcome mat out for that and still drop in. And remember the dropping. Yeah. So sitting, if you're sitting, lying if you're lying, standing if you're standing, as if your life depended on it in this very moment. That kind of resolve, which of course you needed anyway just to get on Zoom. Nobody just kind of stumbled in looking for something else on Zoom. It doesn't work that way. So you've rearranged your lives to actually, first of all, be here together. That's the meditation. That's the motivating force. And it's good to examine it. Examine your motivation for coming into this community, which includes the community of you in your own body, in your own mind, as it is, not as you'd like it to be, and then dropping underneath into pure awareness, whether I'm talking or not. So a silence that's not disturbable or perturbable, but that does come and go as our minds wander and get lost. And we're in a certain way, every time we notice the mind is off someplace else, we can see what is on my mind in this moment. And then without building a giant story about it, we just apprehend what that is, and we come back to this moment with an object like the breath sensations in the body, without an object, just pure awareness, doesn't matter. It's the same awareness, just different doors, same room. And so as we move into the weekend, and then our final week, at least for now, together, making yourself maximally available for this moment in a silence that's never not here, and really your ally, your friend, a profound resource for learning, growing, healing, and transformation, liberation, full engagement in the life that's yours to live. And it's always in relationship to others. Near and far, known and unknown. So just this sitting here, beginning to sound like a formula, although I hope it's not for me or for you, but just this sitting here. In this moment you've never been in before, with this breath that's never arisen before, and the only one that counts. Just this being human, alone and together. Just this. Just this. And let's sit today, let me invite you to sit today with your eyes open and gaze out beyond the screen and just drink in whatever's before you and around you, so that the world is actually coming towards you through the visual field. That may include a sense of parts of your face, parts of your body if they're in your peripheral vision. But just noticing that you don't have to do anything, that the world is actually arising and arriving. And you can receive it through the eyes, through the ears. Through the skin, especially if there's any breezes in the room or in the space that you're in. Through all your senses. and you're experiencing it, if possible, without building a narrative about it, my relationship to what I am seeing, but just the bare actuality of receiving the visual field as it is. Moment by moment by moment as we sit here. Completely at home in your own skin, in your own body. In this moment, regardless of how pleasant or unpleasant, challenging or terrifying the circumstances are, for now, we're simply here and putting out the welcome mat. And when you notice that, you start to build a story about what's coming in through the eyes or through the body. That noticing is also mindfulness. And then the story can end just right there, just like touching a soap bubble. And here it is, the bare actuality of what is coming, what is here, of being in reciprocal relationship with the visual field. And then if you like, for the remaining minutes of this sitting, if it feels more comfortable to you to let your eyes close as you sustain a seamless continuity in the wakefulness, in the awareness, then by all means, just letting the eyelids slowly descend. Are you the same when you do this or different? When you're ready, taking a slow, deep, more intentional breath in and just letting it release and allowing your eyes to open whenever you feel comfortable with it, moving a bit if you need to. Soren, I'm seeing you featured on my screen. Are other people seeing that as well, or are they seeing me?
They should be seeing you, Jon. They should be seeing you.
Okay, and they have through the whole time. I just, no, I'm seeing myself. Hi there.
I just opened up chat so you can let us know what you've been seeing. But
Sure. Okay.
they've been seeing you, Jon.
Okay. Just checking because, it's the first time that I was talking to you directly in the big screen. So because this is our last Friday together, I thought maybe I'd just say a few things before we go into our dialogue. One of which is I said I would continue to recommend various things to read, although I am hesitant to do that because for obvious reasons, I don't want us to kind of go too deeply into our heads around all of this. But nevertheless, there is so much richness to be gleaned from seeing what various people say about the meditation practice, in particular mindfulness, and how it relates to stress, pain, illness, addiction, you know, all of the kinds of things that trauma, all of the kinds of things that are part and parcel of having a human body living in society and that are so prevalent now in the pandemic. I mean, none of the ordinary stuff goes away. So, and I'd like to, and these are not meant to be exclusive or you have to read this or anything like that, but some of the, you know, many books that have meant something to me over the arc of my life, and one of them is this small volume called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Probably most of you know it or have read it, by Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, from another era, who, along with all sorts of people in California and the Bay Area, founded the San Francisco Zen Center ultimately, and the Green Gulch Monastery, and also Tassajara Mountain Monastery. The beauty of this book is that it's so simple, and it really is a beautiful pointer into the practice in just the ways we've been unfolding it in a slightly Japanese Zen language, but there's a lot to be learned from that. Another one would be this kind of classic by Thich Nhat Hanh, The Miracle of Mindfulness, which I think came out in 1976, maybe his first book in English. Really profound, just the light touch. So many books by Thich Nhat Hanh will kind of potentially that you may find them really illuminating and remind you of what you already know in terms of your own practice. And then my colleague Judson Brewer, who used to be at UMass and is now at Brown University, at the Center for Mindfulness at Brown University, called The Craving Mind. It's a really beautiful entree into some of what's being discovered through the brain science and the whole questions of addiction and so forth, and how mindfulness can really make a profound difference. And another one called The Telomere Effect by Alyssa Epple, who has been on this in this community from time to time, I'm sure, I believe, and her colleague Liz Blackburn from UCSF. They're both from University of California, San Francisco, and Liz Blackburn won the Nobel Prize, I think, back in 2009 for her work on telomeres and telomerase and the potential and the whole question of cell senescence, cellular aging, and the effects of stress on cellular aging. And they're doing a lot of work, and it's summarized in this book about how meditative awareness, particular mindfulness, can actually affect cell senescence and cellular aging in ways that are really worth thinking about, not from the point of view of living forever, but much more from the point of view of working with the kind of stressful conditions that arise to minimize the degree of biological costs that we pay for. You know, when things are very high stress, we often say, well, that experience took years off my life. Well, this kind of research has demonstrated that's not just metaphorically true, that's actually literally true. But that at the same time, it's not the stress per se that takes the years off our life. It's how we are or aren't in relationship to it. And that's where we have enormous amount of latitude in interfacing with the unwanted and the challenging in ways that move us towards greater health and well-being. And so again, those might be interesting for some of you to play with, and they are part of this much larger field that we put this slide up a number of weeks ago. This is an exponential curve, but a positive one, as opposed to the corona pandemic, that this is the number of papers in the scientific literature and medical literature per year from about 1980 with the term mindfulness in the title. And this is peer-reviewed journal articles, so a very uh, tight constraint for what will be accepted into this graph. And it shows that research on mindfulness is actually, at least before the pandemic, was exploding in the past 10 years or so and going exponential, and showing us a whole range of ways in which what looks a lot like nothing from the outside turns out to actually drive neuroplastic changes, to drive very positive changes in gene expression in all sorts of cells within our, sort of DNA and chromosome complement, and also have this effect on cell senescence and cell aging under stressful conditions. And also to just say that among the papers, I think I mentioned that before, there's a paper that was published not very long ago, a few months ago, in one of the premier scientific journals, Nature. And this paper is entitled Mindfulness Meditation Activates Altruism, from both UCLA and Berkeley and Yale. And I'm pointing it out to you not so much that you should read this, but to demonstrate that some of the most highly respected institutions of research and learning in the world and in the United States are actually publishing papers in some of the most high profile journals about the whole question of mindfulness in relationship to self and non-self and altruism, and the potential for influencing resilience and health and caring, compassion, kindness. This would have been considered beyond the lunatic fringe 30 or 40 years ago. And now it's in the mainstream of science and medicine, and only in its infancy. We have a long, long way to go. And it's very important to not believe everything that is published in a scientific journal or written in a book. But over time, things either stand the test of time or they don't. And the general trend is that there is an enormous potential for these meditative practices that cultivate mindfulness and compassion to actually transform our biology, our physical, if you will, being, our cellular being, as well as our relationality to each other on the social level and economic level, and what's called neuroeconomics, which also studies these kinds of things. And that altruism paper has everything to do with that. And then it makes so much more credible something that's thousands of years old, but that it's very easy to dismiss because from the outside it looks a lot not like nothing, and can easily be dismissed as navel gazing or self-preoccupation or narcissism, when in fact it's the exact opposite. It's a kind of deep scientific inquiry where every one of us is a scientist, and this is our laboratory. Actually, life itself is the laboratory, but this is kind of our interface with the world and with life, both inwardly and outwardly. And we can study it even if you don't have an fMRI scanner. You can study it like this. And you'll know more than you'll ever be able to find out by looking at fMRI scans or PET scans or any other lines of scientific evidence. But that they complement each other, these different ways of knowing, these different epistemologies, and they are actually inviting us to understand on deeper and deeper levels what is the nature of our humanness. And how can we mobilize it and recruit it in a way that actually maximizes benefit and well-being for all and minimizes harm? And so, in a sense, the science is supporting mindfulness meditation practices right at this critical moment on the planet, where between global warming, if you remember global warming, the pandemic, and all of the arising of uh, standing up to overt and subtle institutional injustice is happening and demonstrating that the time really has come for us to transform our relationship with the body politic and bring whatever rhetoric of liberty and justice for all, or liberté, égalité, fraternité, into the 21st century for the benefit of all. So it's not mere rhetoric, and we don't pay attention to the ways in which it's betrayed constantly. That's the curriculum. It's big. It's from quiet non-doing in the privacy of your own home to being out there and putting your shoulder to the wheel of social transformation in whatever ways we can for the sake of the planet, for the sake of future generations, and for the sake of our own ability to sleep at night, for the sake of our own sanity, and of course for our children and grandchildren. So having said that, you've heard me say it all before, but as we move asymptotically towards next Friday, I wanted to just kind of remind you that there are all sorts of supports out there. And I'll keep mentioning them over the course of the coming week. But the most important thing is you've already got it. You've got the most important thing, and that is you, your body, your heart, your mind, and your love for what's deepest and best in yourself, what subtends and drives biological, psychological, social, political happiness and well-being, health, you could say, the health of the body politic, as well as the health of the body. And that it's an adventure that we've all had a part in and a taste in over this 12 weeks. Now, today is the 5th day of the 12th week, if you're counting, that we've, many of us, most of us, I think, have been here together. And this is just 1 hour or 2 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays of our lives. But the question really is, well, how is this influencing every aspect of our daily life from the moment we wake up, as I've been encouraging you to play with over time? And whether you get down on the floor every day and do something with your body to remind you that you're an animal, let's say, that you're a mammal, that you know that the body loves to be in movement, that it loves to see movement come out of stillness, and stillness, find stillness in movement, and to listen to your body and play the edges of where it's creaking or where it doesn't want to stretch or move or lift or hold. And that's a profound way of nurturing the body. Of course, what I'm talking about is mindful hatha yoga at whatever gentle level that feels right to you. But to not forget about that door into the awareness, the body door. Of course, aerobic exercise also great and very important. You can do that mindfully too. There's very little that we can't actually do mindfully, from washing the dishes and cooking dinner and figuring out when to put on your mask and when not to, and how to get close to people or not, and in what kinds of environments. And, this is really requiring us to be as sensitive to our own inner intuition as possible. Intuition is a kind of form of intelligence. It's trustworthy, at least to entertain that it might possibly be looking out for you in a certain way. Because there's no script for how this should unfold. And there are no guarantees about how the virus is going to do its thing in the coming months, in the southern hemisphere, in the northern hemisphere, on one side of one ocean or the other side of the ocean. So taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other and knowing how to do that and trusting your capacity to do that, that's the meditation practice. And we've been sheltering in place on this mitigation retreat now for quite some time. And I would say that, just speaking for myself, has been profoundly meaningful for me to be part of this community of practice. And I see that, as you know, going on forever, even if we take a break from Zoom for a time and avail ourselves of all sorts of other supports, some of which I will talk about next week. But for now, let's dive into our time together. And again, I'll say, I don't know about you, but I'm sensing that it's true for you too, that the people who have managed to raise their hands and gotten called on, the context of our conversations have been so profound that I feel that, they really point to how to live our way into the meditation practice 24/7, no matter what is coming up for us. And that is exactly what we'll need to thread our way through the next days, weeks, months, and years on this planet, no matter where you live, no matter what time zone you're in, and no matter what your particular circumstances are. And that's the love affair of mindfulness practice embodied. And there's so much richness out there that we can avail ourselves of, but the deepest richness right here. And right here in our community. So over to you, Soren.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jon. And just a couple pieces before we bring in our first person. So next Friday will be our last Friday. There were some questions in the chat. Jon was referring to, this is the last Friday of this week, but our final Friday will be next week.
Yeah, make no mistake about it. We have one more week.
We have one more week. Also, some people have mentioned all the videos are currently up and they will all stay up for as long as YouTube exists. They're all up on that site, so you can always access any session that has ever happened here for the last 12 weeks or so. And you can do that again anytime you want, but we'll send you a link at the end of next week where it's all the videos live. And we're also breaking up some of the Q&As. You can actually just go and watch a couple of the Q&As that you found interesting. We're developing that now, and we'll make that searchable. So you're like, oh, what did Jon say to that one person about anxiety or about this? We're working on that, and we'll share with you when all those are. They're available now in the sessions, but they'll be even more easily accessible. And
so I wanted to say, Soren, just to interrupt for a second, sorry, that today in the United States is Juneteenth, okay, which is actually a recognition of the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the enslaved people in the United States in 1865. And I love that we are together on this day, and in some sense recognizing that, that was a major event in the history of the United States, but it was only the beginning of something, the work of which is going on to this very day. and is right in our faces in beautiful and also horrible ways right in this moment. Sorry, Soren. I just want to make sure I got that in.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then lastly, Perry and Thomas are continuing to work on a website and also the map of love. So more information will be coming to you later about just kind of where the map is, how to access it, and other ways to add events and do different things. So all that's being worked on, and hopefully we'll have more information next week. And I know there's a lot of hands up. I'm seeing Verna. I know you've had your hand up for quite a while, so I'm bringing you in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see. I'm asking you to unmute. You're good with us. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm from Istanbul, Turkey.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much for the
Fabulous city.
It is really. I was thinking like it's coming towards the end. I won't be able to ask the question. Actually, it's not a question, but a reflection maybe.
Sure.
And maybe you can add to that. Right from the beginning, I've started feeling something during this pandemic, that there is something shifting in terms of presence. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work mostly with children. So when the pandemic started, of course, we're all in our homes and we started working online with adults and families, but it's quite difficult to work with children.
Yeah.
Because when we were in the clinic, we were in a room with the children doing mostly play therapy. And I always felt that my presence was enough for them to stay in the room. But in front of the screen, and I also see this when children are in front of the screen when they're doing their school programs, it's quite difficult for them to stay in front of the screen doing formal things rather than games, video games. So it was, I think, the first week that I couldn't join in Zoom. I was in YouTube, and the second week I was in Zoom, and I was looking at Jon's face, and I thought, is he frozen? My first impression was, is the screen frozen? But then I really looked at your face very carefully, and I realized that you were in such a silent state, and I really felt your presence across the screen. We're in two different continents, and I was shocked to feel that your presence in my room, it wasn't a physical presence like I feel with my clients in the room, but it was a real presence, a different presence, but it was so real, and it was in the silence. And at that moment, something shifted in my life in terms of my understanding of presence. I mean, the way I feel my presence, and I feel the presence of other people in my family around me, and also people's presence through the screen. And something shifted in my life, in my daily life, and in my clinical work with my patients in the screen with this format. And I thank you for that, because something I've been doing meditation and working on mindfulness for years, but this time in front, I don't like, usually I don't like I don't like online stuff, and I don't like the screen much. I don't use computer much, but now we have to. But something really shifted, and I realized that it's not about the screen or physical presence of the other. And actually, the one more thing that I realized, since we go out very when it's urgent, we went out only when it was really necessary. But in our culture, people have this custom of getting very close to each other. We're a culture of people who like touching each other a lot. So it's quite difficult in this time of pandemic for people to learn about physical distance. We don't have physical distance. So, and I saw that we don't learn it in 10 weeks. So it was quite, when I was in the outside world, it was quite persecutory for me, because I'm waiting in line in a market, in a pharmacy, but I just suddenly realized that there's someone so close to me. So I'm like this. I'm really scared of the presence, physical presence of other people, not to get the coronavirus. So something really shifted, both in a paranoid way when we are outside, but when I feel safe at home, I realize something beyond that. And maybe you could add something about this presence, the feeling of presence of oneself or other people around you.
Well, that's really an extraordinary report. And I'm not sure, as I've said multiple times, that I understand what's going on with Zoom myself, but I'm so touched that that something shifted in you. There's a certain kind of embodied intimacy or presence that somehow makes room for the other to feel at home, and feel seen, even under very challenging circumstances. Now, whether that can happen with children when you're trying to do therapy with children online, that's who knows. But in terms of what shifted in you, I'd like to hear more from you about, if you have anything to say about like what the actual shift was and how it's influenced, say, even standing online in the shop and then realizing that you're too close or uncomfortable or scared even.
Mm. You want to hear about that, the fear of the presence of the other people?
Whatever you want to, however you want to respond.
Well, I think there is something that I always found difficult in my culture about this lack of personal space. That disturbed me even before the pandemic, but now it's even more disturbing. That's kind of I feel fearful, and at those times it's difficult to be. I'm trying to be mindful in the outside world about wearing the mask, keeping my distance, not touching surfaces, not touching my face. But when I realize other people are not mindful about it, and I can understand. At the beginning I was angry, but then I understood why they're not doing it with bad intentions. But then I saw the difference between being mindful and being mindless. Yep. So that was a very good example of being mindful all the time in your life, in your daily life, other than the meditation periods. But what happened that first Zoom day that I could attend was really profound. That was really something I met in the silence, through the silence, within the silence. It is difficult to put into words because I never thought it could happen through the screen, but now I also feel it with my friends in other Zoom meetings, in many different places. I just experienced it once, and then it just kept on going because I think it is a state that you can only become aware of when you're really quiet, calm, when you drop down.
Beautiful. I would hesitate to call it a state, although I understand why, and neuroscientists use that word a lot. I think we need to find another way to actually language these kinds of discoveries in ourselves, because as soon as we call anything a state, then there's a certain way in which we differentiate it from the other states, and then we want it, or we want to construct it or get back to it, that good feeling of like really being present. So I prefer to not think of mindfulness or that as or anything that arises in meditation as a state, so much as simply a way of being in relationship to reality. Mm-hmm. And when you are willing to show up fully for yourself, then in a sense, you can see that in someone else and have that kind of understanding, because you're both standing under something enormous and feeling it. And that goes in some sense beyond time and space and puts you back in touch with yourself in some new way. But it is a way of being in relationship to the body and to the world that you can continue to explore, you know. I kind of have said it many times that when I'm in conversation with somebody, including yourself, that I can feel you right through the screen.
Mhm.
And we don't know each other at all, but there's a certain way in which there's a connection that goes beyond time and space and the narratives, and it's felt and it's liberating, it's freeing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think sooner or later this is going to influence when you do get back with the children in the room doing play therapy, you know, in the analog room, you'll be more present for sure
Mhm.
because of what's been unfolding.
Yeah.
And if you don't turn it into a strategy or a technique, you know, or into another clinical psychology module, then you have that poetic license and freedom to actually, the kid will pick up on that. The child will pick up on that because that's what's most interesting to any human being about another human being is they're not having an agenda, but they're willing to be 100% here.
Mhm.
Children feel that more than we do,
Yeah.
as long as we're not trying to coerce them or manipulate them into having some kind of special experience, because then we'll feel like we're helping them.
And one more thing, I think about that for the moment, I can feel that it's a way of being, but I think it needs a lot of practice,
Yes.
especially during the day. For now, it's kind of something I catch during the day, but it's not all the time. I'm sure it's not going to be all the time, but I can feel that it's going to become a way of being, but I'm just at the beginning
Yeah,
of that.
well, you know, I don't know if, have you ever been to New York City?
Yeah, many times.
Okay, so there's a cliche in English, especially among New Yorkers. How do you get to Carnegie Hall, which is the big concert hall in New York City
Yeah,
on 57th Street?
yeah.
Um, and the answer is practice, practice, practice. So the more you exercise the muscle, so to speak, of mindfulness, or the more you engage in the love affair of wakefulness without an ulterior agenda to get anyplace else, the more that becomes, in some sense, your default mode.
Yeah. And it's I really like that. I really like the feeling in that way of being. I really liked it, and
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for
Well,
that.
listen, I mean, that might be a good definition for authenticity,
Mm.
you know, that you just show up as you 100% and make space for the other to show up as well.
Yes, it is an invitation. I realize that when you're there, people join you there. I really felt that
Yeah.
with my clients. I really felt that when you're there, they just come to that.
Except let's, as I've said a number of times, chop the T off there.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay.
it's when you're here. I keep doing it because you can see how easy it is to fall into kind of languaging in that way. And I know English isn't even your first language, but
Yeah.
for us, you know, for those of us who, we often put there out there when we really, it's kind of much more of a rotation in consciousness to anchor it here.
Hmm.
So thank you. I'm so glad you raised your hand.
I'd also like to thank Soren and Jon for the organization. To me, pandemic has been something that I learned a lot about human beings, myself and everyone else, but this experience was exceptional. I always remember this. Thank you very much.
Thank
to
you.
all.
And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more, Jon?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for
All right.
one more.
And again, apologies, there's a lot of hands up today, and apologies if we can't get to everyone. And lastly, just know that if you're chosen, your image does get projected here and on YouTube. Christine Shepkins, you should get a option to mute or unmute. Yeah, I think you want to try talking. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you can speak up just a little bit, let us know where you're calling from, question, reflection, that'd be wonderful. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. I'm Christine and I live in Belgium. Is there any way I can see Jon? Because I see myself now on screen.
Well, I can make it that way. Yeah, we usually highlight the person speaking the question, but is that better for you?
Yeah, that's better for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Soren, for allowing me to speak, and hi, Jon, and everybody else
Hi
on
there,
Zoom,
Christine.
on YouTube. I don't have a specific question, but I just like to share something with you all.
Of course.
And Christine, would you prefer not being seen? I think people would probably ideally like to see you as they hear your voice, but would you not want to be?
Fine.
Is that clear?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to spotlight you, but if you don't want to see yourself, you can pin. If you go to Jon, you can pin him. But I think people would love to hear you and see you at the same time if they can, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, but you can feature me so that you're talking to me, but everybody's seeing you.
I'm not so good at these things, so.
That's okay. None of us are very good at it.
Yeah. You should be able to click, I don't know if you're on an iPad or a computer, but you should be able to put Jon up on your personal screen.
Okay.
Am I on your screen now?
No, I see myself twice, but it's okay.
Okay.
I just like to share that over the past 10 years, I've been practicing mindfulness. Now this pandemic, I realized what a help it has been for me in my life. And through this pandemic, I really feel that it helped me a lot to find or to explore myself and realize what my true essence is. So revealing more my true essence. Mm. And over the last few days when I followed you, you've talked a lot about children. And I agree that we have to, it's really necessary to guide our children, to let them explore their own being. But I like to talk a little bit about the other side of the spectrum, the older people. Because here in Belgium, the first thing they closed down were the nursery homes for the older people. So no one was allowed to get in anymore, no family, no friends.
Yeah, nursing homes yeah.
And just the staff was allowed to go in and out, of course, but they weren't prepared for this virus attack, and they had no materials, no masks, no protection clothes, nothing. So a lot of older people in Belgium died because of that. Yeah. Alone without their family. I don't know how it is in the other parts of the world and in America.
Here too.
More than 50% of the deaths were older people.
Yeah, here too.
Because they were not protected. So before they shut down those homes, I really felt deep down I needed to take care of my mom and get her out of there. So I brought her home. And now she's with me for almost 4 months. And me and my husband, we take care of her. And we are in our house for 4 months now, and it's been a blessing to me. I can't explain how beautiful it is to share this quality time with her. And now I realize how important mindfulness is to me, because I grew up in a dysfunctional family where there was a lot of alcohol abuse. Nearly every day, the alcohol stood on the table next to the milk. And I had a really, really tough childhood. And before I started mindfulness, I was always in my mind in the past. And now, after more than 10 years practicing mindfulness, it's amazing how I can be 24/7 with my mom, taking care of her and staying in the moment, not go back in the past, but really stay in the moment and enjoying having her around me without going always in the past in my mind. And it's so a beautiful, amazing gift just to share little things with her. And I feel that it's so important that we need to protect our older people as well, just as we have the sorry, I'm sometimes looking for words because English is not my
You're
language.
doing fantastically.
So it's really important to protect our children, but I feel deep down it's also important to protect our older people, because our mothers, our fathers, we can learn so much from them. My mother doesn't talk a lot about herself. She doesn't know what mindfulness is, and she doesn't know how it is to express her feelings. So it is a challenge to be with her and feel so connected with her without the words. And that's what I have learned through mindfulness, to connect with myself deeply and with her and share these beautiful moments with her. And sometimes it scares me a lot, because in Belgium, the borders are back open. People are going to work again. The restaurants are open, the bars are open. And when you look at the street, it's like there is no pandemic anymore. And
right.
yet every day there are more than 100 new cases here. And that scares me, because I don't want to bring her back to the nursery home yet, because I feel I can't protect her there. And I want to stay with her for a little while. She turns 93 in July, and it's hard because bringing her home, I didn't even have to think about. My deep essence told me, Chris, you have to do this. There is no question about it. But now when everything is going open again, it's a more difficult decision
Yeah,
for me.
yeah, very much
What
so.
am I going to do? So
I feel with you. And I think most of us, whatever country we're in, are caught up in just those kinds of dilemmas at the moment, with this kind of opening up and people wanting to go back to normal, but there's no going back to normal. And when, you know, with what's going on in all of those institutions for the elderly people, it's you know, it was a death sentence to stay in there, basically. And
yes,
so just a deep bow to you for bringing your mom home and having these wonderful months together. I mean, that's priceless. It's really priceless.
yeah, it's a gift. There is no amount of money I would have. It's really a gift to have her here and to share all those beautiful moments, bathing her, helping her to dress, cooking for her, doing the dishes together. And all of the time I am really in contact with myself, and everything that arises is so beautiful in the moment.
Well, I think you're teaching all of us. You're an example for all of us because that's what the practice is, you know, living out of your own deep intuition and heart, what's most important, and then, you know, giving yourself over to that. And, you know, and especially given what you said about your childhood and the alcoholism and so forth, in a way, it sounds like you're recapturing something that maybe for the first time in terms of your relationship with your mom, whatever the conditions were that were going on in your family as a child, that you're connecting in an incredibly beautiful way with her at a moment that not going to last forever.
Yes, it is amazing, Jon. It's really because I see her for whom she is today and not whom she was when I was a child. And I did that for a very, very long time.
Yeah. There's a line
Now,
from the go ahead. What were you going to say?
I now realize that it was time for me to take care of my inner child. It's not her job anymore. I'm an adult woman and she's my mom. And I want to take care of her as an adult person.
Yeah. Well, sounds like that's exactly what's happening. And that's, you know, the love affair of the meditation practice and life expressing itself and not missing the opportunities that are available. And again, under circumstances you couldn't have predicted and that are absolutely horrifying. All of those unnecessary deaths because of the lack of protective equipment and the kind of misunderstanding about the nature of the virus and all that kind of stuff happened to a huge extent and still is in the United States too. But there's a line from the Irish poet William Butler Yeats that comes to my mind in terms of your mother. It goes like this: what else could she have done being who she was? Was there another Troy for her to burn? So the fact that you get to reconnect with your mother in this now, in spite of everything that happened then when you were a girl, I can't imagine that it is not profoundly healing for both of you in a way that not everybody gets to appreciate. While mother and daughter or father and son or mother and, you know, sort of son, all those combinations while we're still breathing together. And you made it happen, in a sense, rescued her, but also not just rescued her, but gave her, are giving her a phenomenal gift that actually is a phenomenal gift to you as well.
It is.
I would wish, my aspiration would be that more people would get to experience something like this.
That's my reason for sharing this, Jon, because maybe some of you will, have more bravery or would like to explore it some more. And don't be afraid, because it is worth it. Even if you've been through terrible times, but it really is worth it, because now sometimes when my mother likes to lay jigsaw puzzles, and when we are doing the puzzle together, sometimes she looks at me and she has such a a bliss of a smile on her face. And she doesn't need to say anything.
Mm.
I just can see how happy she is and how safe she feels. And when I put her to bed, she say, Chris, I am so grateful. Thank you so much. And then my heart just explodes of warmth and lovingness. And that's amazing. And I have to wait for this for more than 50 years, but it's really, really worth it.
You didn't miss the opportunity.
Ongoing.
And just to say, jigsaw puzzles are a fantastic form of meditation.
Yes, it is. She lays one a week of 1,000 pieces.
Whoa, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank you, Jon.
I'm going to carry that story in my heart for a very long time. And just to say in closing that we will see you next week, Monday. Thank you, one, and thank you all, whether today's the first time you've been on, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Zoom. This has been such a moving experience, day by day, moment by moment. And we're all, in some sense, contributing to teaching each other. It's a perfect example of Indra's net and how we're all learning from each other and from everybody's willingness to share in the way that you just shared, Chris, and to, explore together. And it's just a marvel that we can touch each other's hearts in such a difficult time, spread so far apart from each other, and have there be no separation whatsoever. So Soren, over to you.
So we're here again, Jon.
Yes, it's come to that moment we call now again. So we're not late. We're not 15 minutes late. We're just here again.
Just here again.
Right.
So I'm going to unmute, or you can now unmute yourself and say your goodbyes, your thank yous.
And go to gallery view, right?
Yep, go to gallery view, and you can do that starting in this moment.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine.
Good night.
Good day
Bye,
to those
thank
who have
you.
days.
Weekend.
Goodbye. Thank you so much for sharing
Love
your
to
stories.
everybody.
Thank you so
Wonderful
much.
being together.
Bye.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you, Soren. Thank you, Jon.
Happy birthday, Jon, and everyone.
Spending time with you.
Say goodnight. Have a nice
Everyone.